My name is Yet Torres, and I'm the Public Programs and CAM Lab Manager here at Contemporary Arts Museum, Houston. Welcome to today's hybrid conversation in conjunction with the exhibition, 6 Scenes from Our Future. I am here at CAM with JooYoung Choi, and we have Frank Oz joining us virtually. Before we begin, I want to share that CAM is open today until 9 p.m. this evening. Be sure to check out both exhibitions currently on view, 6 Scenes from Our Future, which we are seated in right now, and This Way, a Houston group show currently in our lower level gallery. On Saturday, March 16th, from 1 to 4 p.m., we will be activating the entire museum during our spring break community celebration. Please join us for an afternoon of art-making activities and a cross-discipline, a teen performance showcase curated by CAM's Teen Council. We ask that you make sure to follow CAM on social media, to sign up for our e-newsletter, and to check out our calendar for details on all of our upcoming programming and events here at the Contemporary Arts Museum, as well as at CAM Lab at Post Houston in downtown Houston. Also, you can learn more about JooYoung's characters by exploring the Cosmic Womb coloring book, which is available at our front desk, as well as on cam.shop. So now a little bit about our artists. JooYoung Choi is an Afro-futurist world builder who documents the intersecting narratives of a highly structured, expansive, fictional land called the Cosmic Womb through painting, video, sculpture, animation, puppetry, music, interactive community projects, and installation art. Choi's complex and thoughtful interdisciplinary projects merge the autobiographic with the fantastic to form a dynamic, heartfelt, and imaginative aesthetic practice. Guided by this narrative, Choi explores themes such as anti-racism, gender inclusivity, transracial adoptee rights, post-traumatic growth, and spirituality rooted in social justice. Born in Seoul, South Korea, Choi immigrated to Concord, New Hampshire in 1983 by way of adoption. While completing her BFA, she returned to South Korea and reunited with her birth family. Choi's work has been exhibited at Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, Parrish Art Museum, Project Row Houses, the Wing Luke Museum of the Asian Pacific American Experience, and the Crow Museum of Asian Art, among others. Choi lives and works in Houston, Texas. Frank Oz is a 4-time Emmy winner, recipient of the Art Directors Guild Award, the Comedy Award, Saturn Lifetime Achievement Award, George Foster Peabody Award, and others.
Boy, I'm impressed.
He's performed with the Muppets and on the Star Wars films. The dozen feature films he's directed include Little Shop of Horrors, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, In and Out, The Score, and Death at a Funeral. Please join me in welcoming JooYoung Choi and Frank Oz. So before we begin, I know several of you have taken note cards. So please know that if you have any questions, there will be a Q&A towards the end, middle of this talk, and we will give you a heads up when it's time to pass your questions to the end of the aisles for pickup. So I'd love to start by asking Frank if you could tell us what your relationship with the imagination is and what may have influenced your imagination as a child.
Wow, that's no fair. That's hard. I thought I was going to get some softball questions here. Geez. I don't know. I think how can one understand where one's imagination comes from? I don't know. I have a feeling because I had such low self-esteem, which is one of the reasons I realized as an adult later on that I did puppets, because I was safe from rejection. The puppets were rejected, so I was safe. I have a feeling by repressing myself, that may have squeezed out imagination that would not have been there had I just been my full self. Now, that doesn't mean that the fact that I'm damaged makes imagination, having damage is a necessity, because Jim certainly wasn't damaged. He had extraordinary imagination. But I think that's in part what happened with me. And otherwise, I'm not wise or smart enough to understand where the hell imagination comes from.
Thank you. And JooYoung, how about for you? What do you feel like your relationship to imagination is, and what may have influenced your imagination as a child?
Um, I I think that there was this place in between reality and imagination, and I was fascinated with this place that was in between as a young person. It was the place where all of the I don't knows, which may have also been connected to self-esteem issues of not knowing, where I was from. I didn't know what my real birthday was when I was little, but there was this magic place in between reality and imagination that I could dream up any answer I wanted as a young person. And as I started to watch films and read books and start to say, who wrote this book? Who drew these pictures? Who made this film? I started seeing, credits in films, and there were all these grown-ups that got to do things that I thought only kids were allowed to do, like make up amazing characters or do these interesting voices or dress up in costumes. And I thought, wow, like the idea that I could live with art as an adult and keep that imagination inside of reality. Not that I have to give it away as a child and shed that skin and become an adult, but I can use all those questions and unknowns to create these imaginative worlds, and that it doesn't have to end when I, become a grown up.
So here at the Contemporary Arts Museum, we have the pleasure of experiencing JooYoung's world, and also through the coloring book, we get to experience the cosmic womb. Frank, did you have an imaginary world that you experienced or retreated to as a child? Or did you find your imaginary world coming to you as you started working with your character development?
I think the latter, although there wasn't character development at that time. When I was 12 years old, that's when I started doing puppet shows in the Bay Area for $25 a shot. And for me, again, I've got to go back to it was a safe means of expressing myself without me knowing that. Um, I looking back, I mean, certainly when I was doing it, I had no idea, no perspective on it. But looking back, I think um, more than anything else, I just was learning while doing, imagining while I was working, and I didn't have a secret imaginative life that I'm aware of. I didn't have an imaginary friend. So I was pretty dull.
So though you think you were pretty dull, do you have a exciting or favorite origin story for any of your characters that you could share with us, Frank?
Oh, sure, I have backstories for people. I'm curious, do you have backstories for yours, June?
Yeah, I mean, there's different characters where, my birth family lives far away. And so when I'm working in the studio, I'll think, oh, I miss my birth father. So I created a puppet character kind of inspired by my birth father. He was a boxer briefly. And so I made a character named Pound Cake Man who, is very strong. And my birth father has always been very open with his emotions, very jovial, and also very, he might cry about something and then be very excited about something and very passionate. And so I thought, what if I could create a puppet where his muscles were all different faces, different emotions? He's right behind me right here. You can see him with the blue face. And you know, it was like when I got to play with that puppet and perform him with other people, it was almost like my friends here in America got to spend some time with my birth father. And that was so cool because, you know, how could I bring all of you to understand, like bring you all to Korea so you could experience what it's like to hang out with my dad. But through the puppets, it gave me that chance.
Yeah, I think with my characters, when I used to do, I haven't performed for about 10 years, but when I used to do them, I had a backstory for not all of them, but the significant ones. But nobody knew it but me, you know, and all, and that was fine, um, because by having that inside me, it made it richer without the people understanding why. So I wonder, when you did that character Pound Cake, the the people who saw it didn't know it was your father, right?
Most of the time they don't know.
Right.
No.
And but by the very fact that how you described your father as open emotions and strong, uh, that informed you in such a way that you could create a more fleshed out character than just a doll.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes like a compass that can kind of guide you in a direction. And then you can maybe pull in, there's other characters that are a hybrid where maybe they have a little bit of one person and a little bit of another, and you can combine them into one character.
Yeah, and
It's
they're all aspects of, I mean, like Trent, his characters are all aspects of Trent's the guy you're with, by the way. I don't know if you know him. Um, uh, he has, he has his characters are aspects of himself. Your characters are aspects of yourself and your other people, and my characters are aspects of myself. And actually, my characters, and to the degree that I know your characters, are aspects of the audience. Because if they weren't aspects of the audience, they wouldn't be connected.
Thank you both. So you're both very prolific and creative artists and performers. And so are there any setbacks that you, JooYoung, have had over the course of your art making that has guided you in how you've furthered your world or the course of your career, and how have you handled like a setback within your creative life?
I was thinking about this question a lot, and I think that the biggest challenge and setback that I've had is time. I mean, there is just not enough time for me to complete all the things that I would like to do. And I mean, every day it feels like there's 101 different ideas going through my brain. You know, an example of that was when COVID happened. I had received grants to do my first film project, and I thought, this is my chance to learn how to direct real human beings instead of puppets. And this will help me with my assertiveness, and maybe I can be less shy. And then COVID happened and there was a shutdown and no one was allowed to come to my art studio. So I don't even know, I think now I have about 120 puppet roommates at this point. Um, but what I realized was no matter what happens, I can be a thoughtful navigator. I can find solutions. And so I tried to take the situation being in shutdown and being isolated and thinking, well, instead of just having the humans that were in my local area coming and working with me, I now have a whole global opportunity. So I was able to reach out to voice actors all over the world to be part of it, and they could record themselves. And then I just had to lip sync myself puppeteering each puppet and then green screen it on top of each other for all like 10 to 12 characters, if not one scene that had about 50 characters. But the thing is there was a solution, you know? Time is always going to be an issue, but as long as I keep my focus and I know that I continue to be a thoughtful navigator about it, I won't always get it right, but I know I will keep trying till I find something that works. Yeah.
It's always the quiet ones who are strong and persevering.
Frank, do you happen to also have puppet roommates?
When you say puppet roommates, could you kind of define that a bit more?
Sure, I think JooYoung can define that because she mentioned that she now has over 100 puppet roommates, right?
Yeah, they're just everywhere. I remember one day I was making a puppet and I heard my husband on the phone saying, puppets, puppets. Yeah, she's making puppets. There's puppets everywhere. So yeah, I mean, actually our house is quite sparse right now. Like I think I was going through puppet withdrawal because I made one since the show went up because there's not a lot of puppets at the house. So, but
I have not one. Uh, I I don't have any puppets in the house whatsoever. Never have had, except for my parents who were Holocaust survivors. They had some characters they made in Belgium in the 1930s, and they brought them over when we immigrated from the United States. And I have them, but actually I don't have them yet because they were in a museum in San Francisco, and so I don't have them right now. But those are the only puppets. But those aren't puppets in the sense that they're family heirlooms more than anything else. So no, I don't. I avoid puppets like crazy because I grew up with puppets. I grew up like from 11 years old on, and I have seen the worst puppet shows, and I've seen brilliant puppet shows. Okay. Uh, but in general, I'm not someone who covets puppets. I covet characters, and that's why I'm with the Muppets. I'm not a. I've never cared about puppets as much as characters, and that's what appealed to me with the Muppets more than anything else. So I don't have any puppets around at all. You know.
So with that in mind about the characters, can you both share maybe some of the process by which you developed the characters you worked with?
No, I'm sorry, that's not possible. Yes. You want to
This is
start,
why I
June?
was nervous. This is why I was nervous.
I never answered the other question actually, but go ahead, June. You go ahead.
Yeah, just we're just talking about if you could both share the process that you develop your characters, if you'd like to start, JooYoung.
You know, the thing about puppets that is so different than paintings is I feel when I'm making a painting, I have this kind of ultimate control over it. I draw these pictures, I put them up there, then I plan it all out, composition, color design. But when it comes to a puppet, you make it and then you start moving it. And when it starts to move, it really becomes its own creation. Um, and then as you add a voice and you start to see how it looks when it's being recorded on the monitor, it starts to evolve and grow. And I started to know the moment that I realized there was a difference between puppets and paintings was I had a show where some people, it felt like people were really stiff and nervous around the paintings, like they didn't know what they were supposed to say about them. But I brought out some of the puppets and people started playing with them and hugging them and making them talk. And someone asked about a villain puppet I had. I said, oh yeah, the Emperor, he's a real bad guy. He's this very grumpy shaped egg character who kind of looks like my first grade teacher, Mrs. Jonick. And this woman was holding the Emperor, like this little Eggman, and just started stroking him and said, oh, I doubt he's evil. Does he have a girlfriend? And I never thought about that aspect of the character. And so I started to realize that the puppets open this entryway for people to help me develop the characters through conversations and getting a type of uh, special feedback that I was not getting from my paintings, because it let people bring their guards down and to let some of that kind of pure wonder and curiosity come out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're different in the sense that you're an artist, and I'm a performer. I used to be a performer, and my process is, first of all, I don't make the characters. The workshop made them. My process is working with my fellow performers and improvising and playing catch with them, and so between takes and things. So we'll have fun, and ours has to have to progress over time, because that's what happens with characters that hopefully more alive. They don't just stay static. So it's a different process for me because I deal with an audience that reacts to a live performance, for instance. And so the process of doing that is connected much more to the reaction of that particular audience that I did, and also is much more connected to the writers, and at that time Jim Henson, and also the other performers. The other performers are very, very important in creating characters. We give and take and have a lot of fun that way. And then we have a lot of fun knowing very well that, oh, wait a second, that might work for the character. The other stuff is crap, but this might work. And we have that fun in a kind of professional way.
So was therefore the development of your characters very collaborative because of the way you were working?
I think the development, I think the spark was collaborative, that they sparked me. But when I have backstories for my characters, I make them up myself. I mean, I'll give you one. I mean, there's a character I do called Sam Eagle, and he's not the character that I created. Jim Henson and Jerry Jewell, the writer, wanted him to be very, very patriotic. But my backstory is, see, he joined. I have to have reasons why my characters are a particular way. They just can't be a way. There has to be reasons, and preferably emotional reasons and deep ones that you all don't know, but I know. So using Sam as an example, I always felt, what's he doing in the Muppet Theater? Where'd he come from? You know, I mean, you know who Sam is, this eagle? Anyway, he's an eagle who's disgusted by all the Muppets. Well, where the hell did he come from? Why is he there? Right? And I have to answer that myself. And so I believe Sam was in his late 40s or in his mid 40s, and he was very disturbed because his daughter married an owl. That stirred him a great deal. And then his wife flew the coop, and so he was alone, and he had nowhere to go. And he was at a particular age where he believed he knew right and wrong. And he was wandering around, and he saw these weird Muppets, and he thought, they need help. They need help. And so he joined them and tried to make them stalwart, righteous citizens. Of course, the truth is he needed help, and that's why he was there. So that's my backstory, you know?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So both of you have made work that has been accessible in various ways to audience members and even audience members that you may not even be aware of. And so did you both make the effort or were conscious in the fact that by creating these characters, by making these puppets, by making films as well as like live performances available, that they were going to be accessible in a certain way?
Not me. Not me. I don't know what's accessible. I don't how do I access somebody else? I don't know anybody else. If I start thinking about accessing or pleasing other people, I'm in deep shit. We're not here for that. What I believe is that I hope I have the universal emotions that can touch anybody from the Orient to the West, to anybody. And I think all of us have the basic human emotions of fear and family needs and love and joy. And so I trust that those emotions that I have connect with the universal emotions of other people. So all I do is listen to myself and play with the other guys. What happens after that? I just hope and I'm like everybody else and it connects. That's all I do. I don't know about you, Jude.
Yeah, when it comes to the accessibility, I think my number one audience, because I can't really, if I try to make something that's going to appeal to everyone, I'm going to be lost.
You can't do that. Our job is not to please people.
There is one person that I focus on pleasing though, and it is the 8-year-old version of me.
Okay,
that
fair
thinks
enough.
She knows everything.
Yeah.
And I remember being in third grade and I would sit and watch animation and be able to guess how many frame rate, like, oh, well, that's good for like 12, frames of animation per second. And those puppets are pretty good, but I don't know. I think that they need to take lessons from these people, and I would sit there. And so sometimes when I'm in the studio and I'm making things, I'll kind of sit there and I'll imagine that there's this 8-year-old version of me and just think, what do you think of this? I feel like you're doing a pretty good job, but it could use more glitter. It's like, uh,
Yeah,
and-
that's you. That's different. Yeah, that's absolutely intrinsically you.
yeah, I mean, and especially, growing up where I didn't see a lot of people who looked like me growing up on television. I mean, it really is about kind of mining what are all the things that I haven't seen in the world that I really would like to see, and how can I make that happen? Um, as a, kind of one of those things that I think about often when creating.
I have a question for you. Looking at, what you've said is, that you were adopted, you came to a new country, um, people didn't look like you, other people, and you've created these worlds. Other people would have created worlds that were dark and angry because of that, because of some of your experiences, some of which you haven't even told us, and I'm sure there are. What happened that it came out this way for you?
I think I got incredibly lucky when it comes to the adults that were a part of my life. I had some extraordinary teachers, directors of community theater, that they didn't care that I was Asian. They let me be the first Dorothy for this variety show I was in, even though I didn't look traditionally what Dorothy's supposed to look like. Actually, my first solo in community theater was singing "It's Not Easy Being Green." I was
Wow.
very tiny and very
Yeah.
loud, so I got the role.
Mm.
But I think that it was having so many people carrying my heart before I was able to have my heart believe in myself, and I have always, when I was little and all the other kids were running around, they always knew where I was because I would be where they had the art table, outside at a picnic, just drawing until I couldn't see anymore, until the sun went down. I just always
Yeah.
had loved creating, and when I went back to Korea and met my birth family, I realized that the version of Korea that I had imagined all these years as a child, it was very different than the one I had imagined versus the real Korea. And so when I started building the cosmic womb, I thought, I could look at how I perceived this world that my birth parents came from and see it as see my imaginary version as a disillusionment of sorts. I could see it as a disappointment that it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, or see it as lies, but I could also see it as this rich landscape to build upon and build a very complex, beautiful, imaginary world. And to see it as this was a coping mechanism for a child who had not very many answers about who she was growing up, and that she was able to put all these fantastic creatures and storylines into those missing parts of her heart. And I could run with it and let it grow into, a giant spaceship that's at the Contemporary
Yeah.
Art Museum,
And I think I connect with that because I was not in control of my life. And most little kids or young children are not in control of their lives. They need parents. And I think that probably is, I had a world in which I created that I could control, not unlike you. And I think that was a balm for me, certainly. And sounds like it was for you also.
Yes, definitely.
When I know JooYoung from when I talk with Trent, and JooYoung, whenever we talk, you'd be more quiet. But boy, I can see now you are one pile driver. I mean, you go from directing to writing, and you jump in with your feet into animation, and if I was Trent, I'd be scared to death of you. But I mean, it's really, you just jump in with both feet.
I think a big part of that, I mean, finding Trent and falling in love with someone who believes in what I'm doing. I remember the first time that I decided I was going to make a sculpture bigger than myself. I wanted to make a sculpture actually look as big as I had been drawing it in these smaller paintings. And so I think it was around 7.5 feet tall, something like that. And, Trent came in and said, "That's great, make more," you know? And it has
That's
always
terrific.
been this wonderful feeling where it's almost like Christmas on a regular basis in our house, because I'll get done in the studio, he'll get to see what I built, and then I get to see what he's painting. And so it's like these gifts just keep appearing all the time, and we get to kind of, cheerlead each other on.
And
It's
when
just
you work, are you in separate studios or one large studio?
Uh, well, Trent has a separate studio, but also I love it. He paints in the house, so it's not uncommon for me to come in to get some coffee and there's music blasting and he's painting in the kitchen. And then I have my own studio at the house. Yeah.
Great. Terrific.
So before I ask my next question, I want to encourage everyone who has a question they'd like to share to please send it to the outsides of your aisle. Please pass it down. We'll have someone come through to pick up those questions. I wanted to also say that, here at CAM, we believe in trusting artists and believe that creatives, performers, artists are essential as they raise awareness about social issues to affect positive change and improvement in our communities. And I would love to hear about a time that working with collaborators, like what's a time that you really felt connected and trusted in the process?
Well, with Jim, certainly. Uh, and it sounds strange. It's not an artistic, this has nothing to do with art. But I grew up in a family, European family, and whenever I asked for the car, my father said no. And I'd have to go to mother and try and change his mind. Let me borrow the car. And my father was such that he'd then say yes, plus give me $5. But so he was, but and he'd always say, well, remember, take route such and such, and and be careful of this, your entrance to the highway here and everything. So I went when I was 19. I went to Jim, and during that time, it was just the four of us in two rooms in New York. But Jim had a used Porsche, and I wanted to. I don't know, a few months after I joined, I guess, and I wanted to, I don't know, take a ride up somewhere, and he said, "No, take the Porsche." I said, "What?" I mean, he didn't say no. He didn't say, you got to go this way. You got to make sure this, be careful of this and be careful don't dent it. He just said, here's the keys. And that, oddly enough, that personal moment oddly opened things up for me that I realized I was in a different world here. And that, and that was in part a great, it was emblematic of how Jim worked artistically too, because there was no possessiveness, there was no ordering, there was no teaching. It was just doing and having fun.
What about for you, JooYoung?
I was thinking about moments with trust, and it was here at the CAM that I was working on a show a number of years ago. And we were racking our brains as to what I should make for the show, because we're going to have a series of paintings. And out of nowhere, I just kind of blurted out, "I'm going to make a giant dinosaur with flowers all over it, and it's going to be amazing. And there's going to be people riding it." And the folks at the camp said, "Sure, go for it. Do it." And it was probably one of the most ginormous things I've ever made. Um, uh, and it was incredible. There was a point while we were working on it that I actually had to climb on top of the brontosaurus to be able to finish sewing its back. And I just thought, this is what happens when people trust you and when you trust yourself. I think that I really struggled with that for a long time. I thought, this is goofy. Whoever would think to make a giant dinosaur like this? But that dinosaur has found a permanent home with an institution, and now it has been able to travel all across the country and bring lots of people joy in many places, including New Hampshire, which is my home state. And so when it was sent to New Hampshire to be at the Currier Art Museum, they invited me to go there to do a talk. And my teachers, many of them that were trying to teach me to trust myself when I was younger, they came to that talk. My Latin teacher, my writing teacher, even one of the coaches for my track team that I was very bad at came. And it was really beautiful to see, even though I didn't trust myself, all that time there were people there rooting for me,
Yeah, it's so I was lucky to have a mentor, and you had various mentors, because we know when there are some teachers who are cruel and say something offhandedly to a child, that child remembers that when they're 60 years old. And so if we're lucky enough to have people like that, and lucky enough to have Jim Henson, who both trusted and took a chance and believed like these people did, we're very, very fortunate. And not everybody has that opportunity. I'm very blessed. Let me ask you something. With your work, what is the common thread underneath it all?
Well, I guess the interplanetary motto of the cosmic womb is have faith, for you have always been loved. And I think there was a point where being adopted and feeling kind of abandoned, I feared that maybe in the grand scheme of the universe, it wasn't that the universe didn't like me, it just forgot about me and I was in its way. And when I created that motto, I was writing my thesis for graduate school and I wrote it on, I had it on the wall. And I was like, I want to make work that promotes this idea because it's really hard to get along in the world when you don't feel that you're loved. I mean, and not in some kind of cheesy, sweet way, but the idea that there is a core sense of being and strength and power that comes from knowing that you can be loved exactly as you are and who you are. And if my work can promote those kinds of ideas, not in a flowery way, but actually to promote it in a powerful, strong way, and also playful, I think things can be both playful and powerful. And that's what I want to do, So I'd say that that is the connecting line in all of my work, is to make sure that there's these deeper, greater, powerful meanings.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And just taking that a little bit further, how do you manifest that in your characters? For instance, when Jim did Fraggle Rock, what he always wanted to have a reason for things, and a large reason, and his reason was to create more harmony in the world, because the people up and down, but nobody understood, nobody got that. It was just a very subtle thing. So what he manifested was these two worlds, and he wanted to have this feeling of that people can get along. And very few people got that. I'm just wondering, do you think people get what you're doing, even though it's subtle, like what Jim has is subtle, even though it's a very large idea?
Yeah, it's interesting because I didn't have HBO growing up, but my aunt did. And so I liked to go to my aunt's house because then I could see Fraggle Rock. And I remember as a young person thinking, wow, I probably didn't use these words, but there's a lot of sophisticated interpersonal conflict being resolved amongst these characters. They're really doing a lot of problem solving here compared to Sesame Street. And I think I wouldn't have had the words to explain it, but I understood that there was something happening that had a little bit more meat to it. And what I always hope with my own art is that it's almost like you can take different levels of steps into it. So if one person wants to come and take one step in, they may be interested in the colors and the formal considerations of the work. They can take 2 steps in and start to wonder, how was it made? 3 steps in, start to look at the story. And then 4 steps in, that's when you start to get to the deeper meaning underneath the stories themselves.
Right.
And
Right.
I love the idea that people can grow with the work, especially younger people that I've gotten to work with that have experienced it when they were very young, and then they can return to the same painting as a young adult and see things in it that they didn't see before because it
Yeah.
wasn't the right time for them to see those things. That's what I hope for the work, to continue to grow with them in a way.
Yeah, I understand. Nice answer. Yeah.
So we're going to transition into a Q&A, and we would like to start with a question from a very special audience member. I'm going to step away for just a moment, grab some questions,
I'm scared to
and I
death.
will be back.
I'm frightened now. Can I leave? She left you alone there. You're abandoned again. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yes.
Sorry, I'm a little nervous here. Hello, Frank. It's so nice to meet you. My name is Eric D. Arrington, and I'm a puppet that's talking to the puppet master right now, so you have to excuse me. My question is about the gag. I happen to be a sloth who's hyperactive, so I'm like a walking punchline. Could you talk a little bit about how you construct a gag?
Well, I would like to know where that British accent comes from.
In
I don't,
South Farrington.
I don't recall many sloths in Great Britain.
It's we're mostly extinct, but I was able to escape the sloth kind of extermination. It was a horrible thing.
Do you want to talk about that more?
Actually, I don't.
Okay. Okay, I understand. Yeah, gag. It depends. I mean, there are jokes that writers write. There's funny stuff that you create with the other people at the moment. But what I tend to do is, if it's in a script, yeah, I take my comedy very seriously, as Steve Martin does, as Bill Murray does. The people who, and John Cleese, we all take our comedy very seriously, and so I treat gags, or whatever you call the funny, with rigor and restraint. It's not casual. It's quite specific. So, in order to make it seem easy and offhand, I guess that's probably the largest way I can describe it without an English accent.
Without further embarrassing myself, I will leave now. But
Trent,
thank you so much.
Trent, you're not hiding your lips behind the character enough. I can see you still. I see your lips move. You got to hide the whole face behind the character.
Not that good. She's better. Okay, thank you.
Please do me a favor. Don't ever let him on camera again.
So we have, I've gathered some questions from our audience, both on Zoom and in person. And this first question is, why should we care about puppets? And I'm so curious to know if either of you have an answer to that. Why
Yeah.
should we care about puppets?
Why should you care? I wouldn't care. I mean, why should you care about oranges? Why should you care about anything? Because if the orange tastes really good, if it's really a delicious orange. But some oranges aren't delicious. So in general, puppets are like oranges. Some puppets are really great and some puppets are not worth it at all. So puppets in general don't mean a lot to me. I think it's the actual quality and the depth of character for the puppets. Otherwise, they're just, you know, before Jim, with puppets, before Jim, puppets were carved out of wood or God, from paper mache to everything. And they usually had characters: the king, the queen. There's the trick marionette juggler. There was the roller skater. There was the breakaway skeleton. These are all individual people, not characters. They're puppets. There's no character whatsoever in them, none. And I did that. I had those characters in marionettes. What Jim did is he exploded everything. His characters were soft. His characters had eyes and nose that could move around. You can create things. That's why I don't think one should be interested. What was the question about should what? Should
Why should we care about puppets?
Yeah, why the hell should we care? I don't care about puppets. I care about the particular work that the people create that is good puppetry, that transcends puppetry and makes something alive. That's what I care about. And puppets are a tool for that. But after Jim kind of broke everything apart and said, no, there's not a king and a queen and a breakaway skeleton and everything else, you could start creating characters that way. Because you can't really create a character from a king. It's a one-note thing, especially marionettes, but even hand puppets. So the characters were soft also. So they're more receptive that way. So once Jim kind of exploded things and could have characters made that way, and that he could lip sync, because he was in television and he had to appeal to the close-up, and the close-up meant you had to really lip sync properly. Once he did that, then characters were created. Then you can create characters. And that's when I would care about the characters, but the characters came through puppets. It's not the puppets I cared about, it's the characters I cared about. That's my answer.
What about for you, JooYoung?
Yeah, I mean, everything that Frank said, I mean, it's definitely that essence of the character itself. I mean, and I've seen some very interesting puppets as well. I think that it's, one thing that I found very interesting is there was a study done with children where they would have them learn a foreign language without a puppet, and they'd have another class where they had a puppet character be a classmate. And this puppet was terrible at learning languages. And they noticed that every time that the little puppet got the answer wrong, the other kids would chime in and try to help the puppet. They felt responsible for this little creature. And it actually vastly improved their grades. Like, the kids were able to comprehend and understand a foreign language more easily. I think that there is a special place that puppets can fit in between humans and, say, art, where they, because it's not the same as like an animated feature or something. There's something about the fact that they actually take space in the three-dimensional world with us, where people start talking to the puppet as if the puppet is real. And there's something, I think, quite magical about that. I remember we were at an opening and we brought Putt, who's actually up on the spaceship right now, a pink octopus with eczema. Trent does the voice for it. And this wonderful elderly woman came over and started kissing and hugging Putt. And I'm watching Trent trying to hold, it's like she forgot that his arm was connected to it and was talking to it and squishing its cheeks and asking if it was, having a fun time at the opening. And you see this light in people's eyes where I don't know where it comes from, but it's somewhere very special, where just all of those walls and those rules about how you're supposed to be fall away. And I think it's quite miraculous when it's done right, when it's a character that really grabs people.
Yeah, when it's done right, exactly.
Thank
Like
you.
anything, yeah.
So I'm gonna ask another question that we received from an audience member. As a puppeteer, and I'll also just add performer, which puppet was or is your favorite to act and or operate? And I
get
think the reason I also picked this question is because I know over the course of both of your careers, as you develop these characters, there is, you're learning from each experience. And so I'm also curious to know, as a performer and puppeteer, which puppet has been your favorite to act or operate?
Yeah, I get that question all the time. What about you, June?
Oh, I would say that there is a rabbit that is right over here. And Ogie Togie was one of my first, he's got allergies. But it's not going to stop him. He was like the first puppet that I made as an adult. And I didn't really understand how to sew him right. And I made his legs so long. And then I put baby shoes on him. And then he looked very naked for like even more naked than when he didn't have the shoes on. And then when I started dancing, making him dance with the green screen, it was just absolutely ridiculous. And I was like, I didn't know that making art could be this much fun. And his voice comes very naturally to me. He's got this can-do-it attitude, like probably was in the Rabbit Scouts, and I just adore him. He's really, really fun to play. It's great when there's a character you can just jump right in and get reconnected to that character. And he's one
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah, it depends. I have a satisfaction from each character. I mean, Piggy's was hard to do because she's very layered and very contradictory and covering up a lot of pain. And so that's challenging. And Grover is easier, is more organic, and Fozzie is easier, and Sam's not a bit more difficult, and Animal's pretty easy. He's just lizard brain, and I have a lot of fun with him. But I guess it's not a question of favorite, but as much as which ones are connected more to my soul. And I think personally, I think Grover and Fozzie are. Although I have great satisfaction doing Piggy and Bert and all the others when I used to do them.
Thank you, guys. So here's a question from one of our Zoom audience members. What advice would you both give to someone looking for the courage to collaborate and create collaborative relationships?
Wow, that's a good question. Could you repeat that question, please? That's a very profound
Absolutely.
question.
What advice would you both give to someone looking for the courage for collaborative relationships? And so how I hear that is, what advice would you give to someone who is looking for the courage to collaborate and to create collaborations, creative collaborations?
I guess I would really wonder what is with a question. What is holding one back from doing that? What is it that's holding one back? Self-esteem, feeling foolish, all those things. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't know how to get advice on courage. I don't know how to do that. I mean, I have to try to find courage in my own life to do certain things, and it's. I think one, as far as courage goes, I think it just doesn't happen. I think it builds inside one for quite a while after one thinks about it and looks at one's life and says, gee, do I want to stay in the same place? And gee, maybe I'll take the step out. And it builds, but I don't know. I'm really curious. I would be curious to know why. What is it that he feels he needs courage to do it for, as opposed to just being him or herself? I don't know the answer, but I would say, if you want advice, I would say, do it very small steps, very tiny steps, one at a time. Take chances, and then run back to mommy and daddy because you're scared. That's what I do. And then go back and I take a bit more of a chance. I run back. Oh, I'm scared now. And then I run forward and I run back. I think you got to take little tiny steps. There's not many people who can make a dramatic, huge step.
Yeah, I mean, being autistic and having ADHD, my social skills are not always the best. And so I think, at least as being an artist, I always used to dream about having friends that I would make things with. But when you're a kid, sometimes kids want to do other things like go to the mall. And I was like, wow, we could make a movie or we could make a book together. And they're like, no, we want to go to the mall. Like, so I was like, all right. And so as an adult, it's been really fun to be at a place where, yeah, you sometimes you just got to take that risk and you meet someone who's interested in, they want to learn about puppeteering, or maybe they want to learn how to sew and do something that you do. And I try to always open it up to, hey, I'm actually working on some sculpture stuff. Do you want to come over? I can teach you. We can hang out. You can help out. I'll get pizza. We'll put on some 80s movies. I don't know, we dance around, eat cookies. It'll be great. And when I started doing that in the studio, starting to bring people in and collaborating in that way, it almost became like modern day sewing circles, where we were making things and talking about life and building friendships and trust with one another through the act of making. But it wasn't easy at first. And even there are times where it's like, I have to get that muscle going to be able to know that, people do want to spend time with one another. It's not always a perfect match, but it's worth taking the risk. And courage. I have a little saying that I tell myself every day: I have the courage to believe in myself and to navigate adversity with curiosity as my compass.
Wow.
So sometimes it's about creating an environment within yourself to believe in that, and then also making space to take risks.
Thank you. So as we round out our time together, I'd like to ask one final question, and that is, for both of you, if there's anything you could share with a younger or child version of yourself, what would you share?
Well, I'm thinking about this person who wonders how one can get he or she can get the courage to collaborate, or I guess step out of oneself. I think I'd share that I think I'd tell myself to take more risks. At the end of the day, what's the worst that could happen? And but I think it's difficult for a child with low self-esteem to believe that they're good enough to take risks. That's the trouble. But I would say take risks in life and be true to oneself.
And how about for you, JooYoung?
I think if I was able to go back and talk to my younger self, the times that she felt the most lonely, to just reassure her that you're on the right path. You may not understand it right now, but just keep doing what you're doing. Be your weird, wonderful self. And don't stop, because one day you will be at the Contemporary Art Museum of Houston talking to one of your biggest heroes.
Well,
yeah, thank you.
She's my hero too.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Is that
Frank,
it?
thank you so much for tuning
Well,
in with us today. JooYoung,
so
thank
you-
you so much for being here with us.
So
Do
you're
either of
dumping
you have
us.
any closing words?
Yeah, you're dumping us. You don't care anymore. No, I think, there's such vibrancy in her work, such extraordinary vibrancy, and it's just beautiful. And it's so interesting. I could talk more about the intergalactic battle, because that's really interesting that caused your focus on separated children. And that you created that battle in order to have separated children. to work with. So that's pretty fascinating. But I think your work is so vibrant and so alive. It's just, it's exciting now.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's just been an honor and a privilege to be able to continue to grow this world and to share it with so many different people. And the more that it continues to grow, the more that I'm able to learn about myself, and be able to have opportunities for other people to maybe access parts of themselves as well, that they maybe need a creative realm to explore that part of their being. And I really do hope that the work continues to just celebrate the idea of growth and exploration. And I'm so glad that we were able to talk about it today.
Yeah, that's what it's about. Okay, I have a question for you before we go. Are you seeing me on a laptop? Is that a
Am I-
laptop?
Yes,
I-
we're looking at you through a laptop.
Okay. I haven't seen the audience. Can you turn the laptop around? Let
Absolutely.
me see the
Give us a
audience.
second.
I want to see how good looking they are. Whoa, that's impressive. Hey, how you doing? God, if I'd known you looked that good, I would have been much better.
Thanks, Frank. Everyone's saying they love ya.
Take care, guys.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, Trent. Take care.